And okay, guys, so today we're starting our unit on DNA. We've talked a little bit about DNA before in some of the other units, especially when we're talking about cells. We've talked about mitosis, how we have to replicate the DNA, because that way we need our daughter cells to have 2 separate copies of it. But we don't know very much about DNA, so this unit is just about DNA. In particular, this first PowerPoint is just going to be about the 5 important scientists that contributed to the discovery of DNA. You absolutely need to know what they do, so make sure you, like I said earlier, make note cards or whatever. So here's what we know about DNA, because we've already kind of discussed this. DNA is pretty much the key to every living thing. Everything that is living on this earth has DNA in it. And DNA gives us a code. And this code allows us to make proteins. And if we remember back to macromolecules, which we did right before spring break, very, very short, every single thing in your body is made of a protein, or it is made by a protein. Yes, Mr. Franta?
What were some of those examples of proteins, guys, that we did?
Name something that's a protein.
What?
Yeah, it could be anything. What's a protein?
What's a protein?
Give me an example.
Remember, a skin cell is a protein?
Skin cells have protein in them
Okay.
that make the melanin. Melanin gives you skin color. Are your muscles made of protein?
Sure.
How many of you have saliva in your mouth? Saliva is a protein. Specific type of protein, what are those called? They make chemical reactions go faster? Steven? Enzymes. Keratin in your hair and on your nails, that's a protein.
What was it, Magic School Bus? You had too much keratin in them? Skin to keep what?
Yeah. Yeah, you turned orange.
The seaweed.
From the seaweedies, yeah. Pepsin, that's a enzyme in your stomach that breaks down your food, that's protein.
So anything ending in IN, right?
Or ASE, because it's an enzyme and enzymes are proteins. Right? First scientist that you need to know is this man, Oswald Avery. Oswald Avery gave us the fact that DNA is what stores and transmits genetic information from one generation to the next. Before Oswald Avery came around, people knew that you kind of looked like your parents and your grandparents and your relatives. Right? They were able to distinguish that. They were able to distinguish that people in the same family looked alike, but they looked different from people in other families. Particularly, Gregor Mendel, who we'll talk about, he noticed a lot of this with peas. Okay? He was able to breed peas and see that certain traits were passed on along generation to generation. Oswald Avery is the one that said DNA is the reason that that happens. DNA is what passes our traits down. This devilishly handsome young fellow, older fellow I should say, is Erwin Chargaff. Terrible name, okay? But Erwin Chargaff is a scientist who took a look at DNA and he said DNA is made of 4 nitrogen bases: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine.
So A, T, G, and C. We'll see those, right?
Yep. And that in every single person's DNA, the number of A's are equal to the number of T's. So adenine is equal to thymine, and C is equal to G. Cytosine is equal to guanine. If those numbers are not equal, you have more A's than T's or C's than G's, you probably have a mutation. Now, most of the time, mutations are something we call silent, which means you, right now sitting here, have tons of mutations in your DNA, and they do not affect you. Mr. Franta.
What are some of the more common mutations that we talked about?
What do you mean?
Wasn't like lactose intolerance?
Oh, lactose intolerance, yeah, because you don't make the protein to make to break down lactase.
But now that they can drink milk, that was a mutation, right? That allows us to.
Yes.
What is something else?
Sickle cell anemia. We talked about if you have sickle cell anemia, your blood cells don't develop into nice round-looking donuts. They look more like half moons. The good side of that is if you live in Africa, you won't get malaria.
What is the one if you're from Scotland or Ireland?
Hemophilia. Is that the one you're thinking of?
Is it what hair color?
Oh, red hair color?
Red hair. Isn't that up?
I don't know if that's that might be a mutation.
Yeah.
An absence of color. So somebody that you would probably refer to as albinism, that's a mutation. It means your body doesn't make the protein melanin, which doesn't give you a skin color. So all sorts of mutations can arise if the number of A and T are not equal and C and G are not equal. We'll see that next unit when we talk about how proteins are made from DNA.
Was fingers one of them, or 6 fingers?
I don't know if that's a genetic mutation. I might have mentioned it earlier. I don't know if it's a mutation. Yeah, I think that's dominant recessive. Third person is Rosalind Franklin. She's very important. Not only is she the only woman we're going to learn about, but she actually kind of got the short end of the stick when it comes to DNA discoveries, okay? She did something very important. She was an X-ray crystallographer, which means she took crystallized X-rays of living things. In her case, she was able to take an X-ray of DNA. And the thing about it is, she did all this work, which was groundbreaking research. Before she came along, we didn't even have any idea as to what DNA could look like.
Really?
Nope.
No idea?
No idea.
Not even like small clue.
Not a clue.
Oh.
We had some theories. We didn't have any idea, though. Couldn't figure out how it works, how stuff gets transferred, things like that. So she did all this X-ray crystallography, and she came up with this picture, right? There is no space for the last two people. You're going to have to squeeze them in on the side or wherever you can figure it out. I don't know what happened when I copied the notes. They're not in there. But here's who she kind of got the short end of the stick to. James Watson and Francis Crick. Arguably, or inarguably, in the science community, the two most important scientists that helped us with the discovery of DNA. So what happened was Rosalind Franklin did all this work. She made this nice crystallized X-ray. And then her lab aide went and gave the pictures to, I believe, Francis Crick was the one he gave it to. And from that picture, James Watson and Francis Crick were able to determine that DNA has the shape of a twisted ladder, or what we call a double helix. Because of that discovery, Watson and Crick got the Nobel Prize in 1956 or something. And Rosalind Franklin didn't get diddly squat.
Hey, it ain't so.
It is true. They essentially stole her work and then used it to come up with this groundbreaking Nobel Prize winning concept, and she got no recognition for it whatsoever, besides here in our classroom.
Can we give her a hand? Bob?
Yay! So these are my 5 scientists that you need to know. Watson and Crick you can put together on one note card, so really if you're going to make note cards, you only need to make 4 of them. Because they work together. They actually were students at the University of Chicago. They were lab partners, graduate lab partners, when they came up with this idea. And they were relatively young too. James Watson is still alive. And he does a lot of TED Talks on the discovery of DNA, which I wanted to watch one today, but it's 20 minutes long, so I don't think we'll have time. Maybe next week we might watch it, because it's actually pretty interesting. He tells the story of how they came up with DNA shape.
Anything else?
Any questions? All right, cool. All right, so in the last 8 minutes of class,